Hello, hello, Sunflower Nation. Thank you again for joining us for another episode of Women in Leadership. Today, we are very excited to welcome Miss Jasmine Young to our podcast, who's going to give us a little bit of information about her journey and share some tips with you. So, Jasmine, thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you tell us about your current role that you serve in and how you got there?
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here today. Hello and happy day to the sunflowers. Thank you so much for having me. Dr. Banks, and I wish you all the best now, yesterday, tomorrow, and forever. So again, my name is Professor Jasmine Young. My current position is the director of the Warner Music Blavatnik Center for Music Business here on the amazing campus of Howard University in the historic Washington, D.C. I'm excited to be here and just to share with you my journey, but I guess I will definitely start from the beginning, right? What happens is I'm a Howard University graduate, right? And I kind of got my start in the music business here on the campus of Howard University. So let's go back in time just a little bit. I am this Black girl from South Jamaica, Queens, and I wanted to go to a Howard University, which is this historic Black university that literally, before then there was no social media, right? And basically what happens is we found out about this college from the pages of Essence and Ebony, right? And so I knew that I wanted to go to Howard, but I wouldn't consider myself like a scholar. I would consider myself an excited leader, teacher, mentor, but I never would have considered myself what we call a professor, right? To this day. And I'll get to how that journey unveiled, right? So here I am, this little Black girl from South Jamaica, Queens, first generation college. I told my parents that I was going to Howard or bust. And my mother, who had traditionally went to, back then, all of the Black girls went to secretary school or accounting school and, certificate based. And she was just like, you're going where? Away from, Queens, New York? And I'm like, I'm going to Howard or bust. I only applied to one school. So I said to my mother, if I do not get into Howard University, I will stay here and then I will apply to a CUNY or SUNY. That's it. I had one track tunnel vision in coming to Howard University, but I didn't even know what that entailed, right? And so the quick story is back then, everything is obviously snail mail. So this is the days before there was email. So we just anxiously awaited the letter in the mail. When I got the letter from Howard, obviously, the financial aid was tricky. I didn't have a dorm at the point, and I was just like, I got in, I'm going. We got in the car on the day. We ended up at Howard University, and it was literally the start of the change of my life. We waited outside what we call the quad, right? And they were originally going to demolish the building, but because they had an overabundance of applicants, they just let us stay there. And we were just so happy to be there. And then, my journey of, I want to say, self-awareness, self-recognition, and just all the things that, I guess I would become later on in life. And so at Howard, I learned all about myself, more about our culture and history, and really zeroed in on what I wanted to do or be in this world. And that would be, a mentor, obviously, in a lot of different ways and reasons. I never expected myself to become a professor, but I did, expect myself to be this executive in the music and entertainment industry. There were a lot of, I want to say, opportunities here on Howard's campus that, traditionally, if I were at another school or another environment, I probably wouldn't have been afforded to. So we have the hip hop conference here at Howard University all those years ago, and I interned as a marketing rep, marketing coordinator, and I learned, the basics of what that looks like, right? And then obviously fell in love with I was already in love with the culture of hip hop, but fell in love with the music business of hip hop, right? And then we had homecoming. So during my senior year at Howard University, I was privy to be the volunteer coordinator for homecoming. And if you know Howard homecoming, you know it's the biggest thing on this side of heaven.
Yes,
It's
yes.
insane. Could you imagine?
Yes,
And it just
yes.
got bigger and bigger and bigger over the years. But what happened was I was fortunate enough to um, be the volunteer coordinator for my year. And I was already interning at Def Jam Records, and I asked them to provide the uniforms for my volunteers. That particular year, I had over 300 volunteers. So imagine one record company having over 300 positions of branding. Obviously, that's what was called, on campus during homecoming. And this was the year that Puffy and Biggie came back and Tupac showed up. And it was just one of the most amazing points of hip hop history, especially here on Howard's campus. Upon graduation, or upon heading to graduation, I was offered a job making no money by Julie Greenwald, who is now the CEO of Warner Electra Atlantic Records, and Leor Cohen, who is now the president at YouTube. And thus my journey began. And I've quickly kind of found my niche, which I call it marketing strategist, or I found, my niche in marketing. And I was fortunate enough to work on projects like Jay-Z and DMX, and a lot of amazing people that back then we didn't realize were going to be these hip hop icons, right? And then years later, and I can, answer anything else, but years later, I met an amazing lady who said that I should be a teacher. And kind of like that message overlapped with a lot of, I want to say, messages or overviews or what people thought of me. And then in 2015, I was the Senior Vice President of Operations and Marketing for The Source magazine. And a friend of mine came in and he's just like, you have a master's degree, like you're really sitting in the source. You could really teach, like you've been doing this and mentoring and giving opportunity for years. Why don't you officially teach? And I said, well, you're not the first person to say that. And thus started my journey of teaching, and thus started the journey of who we call the hip hop professor, or what I am today.
Yes, yes, the hip hop professor. I have heard that before. So let me just start by asking you this. The first thing you said was you had tunnel vision and you only applied to one college, Howard University.
Insane.
And yeah,
Dumb.
insane. Some would
Dumb now
say
that you think about it, right?
insane. Some would say mastermind. Others would say. So I
I take that.
particularly also have always had tunnel vision. I always knew what I wanted to do. I stuck to that one plan, and thank God that has served me well in my life. You have children. Would you recommend them following that same path of tunnel vision, or would you want them to explore multiple options?
Now, right? So I always say, would you do that again? And probably so, based on, my experience in life. And the world was a lot different back then, right? Now we are blessed to have more options, right? There are 100 HBCUs. And because my children are Bison legacies, which I'm so grateful for, they have an option to go out into the world and then, come back. So I told my kids, go spread your wings if that is what you want to do. Howard has been here for 110 years. It will always be here. And you are lucky that, I've grown in a particular certain lifestyle, and I got your back. So whatever it is that you want to do, let's explore that, and don't pigeonhole yourself in this particular situation with one school or one option. Explore all of them, and then you make the decision. But again, obviously we didn't have the Common App, we didn't have the Black College Common App, we didn't have a lot of these mentoring programs for our Black and Brown students. I wasn't as vested in the education system back then as I was now. So would I do it over for myself? Probably so. But for my kids and my legacy, I would say explore all options and then make a decision based on your offerings. That's what I would say.
So one of the things that I always say, it's not just about getting an education, but choosing the right place for you. And it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like, based on how you describe it, Howard was definitely the right place for you, to
Mm-hmm.
really grow and flourish.
Howard University is, and people laugh, but I get emotional and I often cry, right? Howard University, the soil here is anointed, right? It is a place, yes, we are named after, the white folks still. We are, born in that spirit, right? But that was the time in which we were birthed, right? 1867. But it represents something so far amazing, so amazing, so magical, so anointed. And what happens is, and I said this the other day, and I will say this out loud, the experiences that I learned and received here on campus, you can never go anywhere in the world, you can never get this experience. But I will say that these experiences are what you make them.
Right.
Everybody
Right.
don't got the same experience. Everybody doesn't have the same testimony. But for me, this Howard experience was life-changing. It allowed me to be the social justice warrior that I am. It allowed me not to shut up because I am this Black overweight girl from the hood, right? It gave me power, it gave me voice, it gave me vision, and also it just gave me I guess the confidence just to be me and say it loud. And because of my experience, because of my education in Howard, I can literally go into any room and shut it down.
I'm gonna have to send Howard a bill for this advertising.
Yeah,
That would
yeah, we could go the other way too, because that's, on my emails this morning. But yeah, definitely have to send Howard a bill for the commercial. But I would say that it's the legacy of Howard, not the folks, right? Not the
Mm,
administration, not the students. I said that, this is my personal experience and testimony.
I feel the
And,
same way about my alma mater. It's
yeah.
funny. I had another guest on a couple weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking about our college experience. We actually went to the same alma mater,
Mm-hmm.
and she also feels like I would
Mm-hmm.
not be the woman that I am today had I not gone to the College of New Rochelle. Like, it just
Uh-huh.
made us strong women who were able to speak up for ourselves and advocate, on
Mm-hmm.
behalf of ourselves and behalf of our community. So I love it when people have these really amazing college experiences. And again, it's not about the institution, it's about how you grow at the
Right.
institution, what the
That's what it
institution does
is.
for you. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad that you had that experience.
I am so excited for it. And my since we moved back, my younger son goes to Howard University Middle School, and most recently he was invited to speak on a groundbreaking ceremony for one of the oldest buildings on campus, and it was the Minor Building, and just the history that the building entails. The building that served as a safe harbor, run by an abolitionist, Minerva Minor, and all of the history that lies within those buildings and the opportunities that we as Black people as a whole have gained from the sacrifices that our ancestors and allies have contributed. And I just feel like what an amazing opportunity for him. So, and I shared on the same panel my discussion, my love for Howard University as well. And I just feel like, this is one of the places, and we don't have to dwell on Howard, but what happens is I feel like, to whom much is given, much is required. And I do feel like, I owe I owe our ancestors to be the best that I could be. And in my opinion, have I reached that full potential? Not yet. But I do feel like, working every day and striving towards those goals, will be helpful.
Awesome. And so
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned you were at the source with a master's degree, and
Uh-huh.
then after recommendations from different people, you felt like maybe you should try higher education and teaching.
So the source for quite, even though, Londell McMillan is my brother, my friends, previous and current boss, right? What happens is, just another learning experience for me. And it was 13, 14, 15 hours. Luckily our culture and a lot of our jobs are, family based or all inclusive in that way. So it wasn't like, my kids couldn't come up and, sit while I finish. But nobody want that for their kids, right? You want a regular, environment with a great, I want to say, a daily function, right? But it was, fun. And now, years later, my kids understand and appreciate the sacrifices that I, provided for them. But a friend of mine who was a professor at MCNY came to the kind of like forced me, pushed me, was like, you're really sitting up here in the source, and you have a master's degree, but you've been doing this anyway. Lady, you need to go teach. And he not only gave me the offering of teaching, right? But he provided an example of what to do and how to do, but he also connected me to a job. So he facilitated my very first job in the music industry. In the education industry as an adjunct for MCNY, and I taught in the graduate program for media management. And I still have the relationship today, but the goal was just to, train students how to navigate and secure jobs in the music and entertainment business.
And what happened after that? How long were you at MCNY?
So I was at MCNY probably for the past decade, right? So I'm still considered an adjunct for them. And I taught through the pandemic for them, and I have a great relationship with my boss there, Dr. Christy Velasco, who actually went to law school with my previous boss, Lonzo McMillan at the Source, right?
It's a small world.
Small world. And so during that time, I taught at the Institute of Audio Research, because it definitely put me at the crossroads, or put me at the perimeters of teaching students how to get in the music business. And in the interim, friends of mine who I met when I was literally an intern on the campus of Howard University here at Howard, her name is Taryn Mitchell, who was a publicist of the music industry, who now has her JD. She's finishing her EDD. And I asked her about the school that, she worked, which she was a full-time professor. And she actually connected me with the dean, the assistant dean, and set up the demo for me. And a demo, for those of us who are listening, is a mock class, a mock presentation. Mm-hmm. So I did that. I had a phone interview. On my phone interview, my phone died because the man called me impromptu. And then what happens is, and the beauty of it is that it all worked out. And so, no, I'll go back. So my very first class at the particular college was a class called Social Media Marketing, and was a night class, right? And I remember it was a day of like some big protest in New York. And I remember coming out of one job, coming from Union Square, New York, trying to travel up to the Bronx during rush hour, right? Got out of class at 5. And my one class had to be in the Bronx to start this new job or this new journey in an hour. I get in the car, pull off, and my car stops in the middle of the street. Oh. And so I left the car there, called the tow truck, got in a taxi. So by the time I got to the school, my great friend after have been there all day, was actually waiting at my class. So the beauty of it is that everything happened for a reason. And the next year I was offered the administrative position job, and became second to the dean in that department. And not in retrospect, everybody knew that I was literally running the school. And then that goes into the disparities of this Black woman in the workplace.
Who does she think she is?
Who the hell does she think she is? We will keep her at this salary cap. We will not give her any promotions. We'll make her ask and beg for everything. But we know that she's doing, more than anyone has done in that department ever. but that's what it is. But is this the first time we've dealt with that in the workplace? No. Is it the last time we'll have to deal with that in the workplace? No. But that's the beauty of my voice and vision. You could only, it's like it's their institution, if it's their corporation. Um, it's their corporation, it's their institution. So there's nothing that you can do about it but create your own.
Right. Absolutely. How long did you stay at that institution?
Almost a decade. Almost
Wow.
a decade, 2014 to 2022.
Wow.
Almost a decade. Amazing. The practices and protocols that we put into place there, the beautiful students that we were able to service, right? The community, the beautiful community, this underserved community of the Bronx. Although I did not grow up in the Bronx, I have relationship to many, many, many folks in the Bronx and a dedication to the community. So, from our programming to partnering with the U.S. Army to share with them readiness preparedness, right? To feeding the homeless, 2, 3, 4, 5 times a month. All of those things matter to me and my journey. So those were the benefits that I could not, I want to say, you can't take them back, right? You can't, we can't digress, right? We made the decision, we serve students, we serve the community, and timing is everything. Whatever God has for you in that time, then that's what it needs to be respected in that time. That's what I'm
Definitely.
learning. That's what I'm learning. Am
It's
I
a
always,
continuous journey. It's a
yeah,
continuous
yeah.
journey.
It's
And I
definitely a
can
learning.
imagine, as as I'm sure many of our listeners can relate to, feeling undervalued, or even knowing for a fact, that
Mhm.
there is not equity in your workplace. How did you deal with that? How did you cope with that on a daily basis?
Repeat the question.
Being in an environment where you knew that you were serving well beyond your duties and responsibilities,
Uh-huh.
seeing that you were being underpaid, seeing that there was inequity in the workforce,
Yes.
whether you believe that was because you were a woman, whether that was because you were a Black woman, whatever reason it was, how did you cope with that on a daily basis? How did you not leave there angry? And I get it that the students play a part in that, and knowing
Mm-hmm.
that you're making an impact plays a role in that. But there has to be a point where you're like, I'm pissed.
Every day, every single day when they called me at, all hours of the day, they wanted me to do, certain things. I wouldn't say they were unethical, but they were definitely not a part of my educational pedagogy, right? And so, what do I do in that particular situation? I do what's best for the student. I do what's best for ethics. I do what's best for my mental well-being. But the biggest thing for me, obviously are my children. So I look at them and I say, is this the example I would like to present to them? Is this the level of leadership? When they look back, can they be proud? All of those things. So looking at their little Black faces, their beautiful Black faces, and then, just figuring out the next steps in the interim. That's what always, always saves me.
How did you get back to Howard?
OMG. So on a particular day, okay, so the biggest thing for me is giving back. The biggest thing for me is, doing what I can within my power, right? So I always gave back to Howard, and I always came back. I graduated from the School of C, which is a school of communications, and I came back, but mostly to this school of business. On a particular day, a little boy tapped me on my shoulder, a young man tapped me on my shoulder, an amazing gentleman, and more so as the years unravel, right? And asked me for an internship. He'll tell you that he cut the line. He'll tell you that he was abrasive, but I don't just forward in that way. I remember him as being, nice man. I gave, I've given a million opportunities. Some I regret, some I did not. This is one of the opportunities that I'm like, look at this man. So
Mm.
he comes to New York, and I didn't know this. And he literally, I've known that. So I've known this portion of it years later. but he just started to make his story public literally today, which I'll share that with you. But I didn't know at the time that his mother was addicted to drugs and in rehab, and his father was in jail. And he made his way to Howard University and was fighting his own way. Years later, he decided to become an attorney. He is one of, if not one of the best attorneys in the entire music industry. He is the only Black head of business and legal affairs for a record label in the world. He is the head of business and legal affairs at Warner. And during the course of the George Floyd fiasco here in the United States, he had this bright idea to open a center to his alma mater, for his alma mater, our alma mater, and called me in the middle of the night because he lives in LA and said, this is the idea I had. When you think about it, I'm like, brilliant, brilliant on every level. And so he asked me, would I come teach, come be the director? And I was on the fence, right? Because I thought that I had a good job and I was headed for a promotion at the place that I just spent 8 years working. And that did not happen. And so he asked me, would you relocate? I'm just like, maybe, after the kids, whatever. And so the beauty of it and the moral of the story is that a year later, after the center was started, they circled back and I accepted the position and I moved to Washington, D.C. in the fall of 2022. And we have been here ever since. So I made my way home and I keep saying, I am super happy to be home. I'm super happy to be in a position that kind of like everyone who in my circle believes that, God designed this position for me because it's obviously the crossroads of, the music industry, which I'm so happy to be a part of this history, right? So happy to be a part of the, the history of hip hop, but then also, me as this professor, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. However, I definitely just want to make sure that we continue to have this great acceleration, not necessarily crescendo, but an acceleration so that we just, change lives, write history, and continue to do the work. So my job here is to create these social justice warriors and people that will go down, in history as kicking down the doors and breaking through glass ceilings, even in 2023 in the music industry.
I love
and
it.
I'm grateful for this program that, oh my gosh, I didn't have, a me or a Julian or a mentor in this, area. Do I have literally a bunch of other goals that I want to accomplish personally? Absolutely. But they say life is an ongoing journey. Right.
Absolutely.
And so a friend of mine, her name is Zena. Big shout out to Zena. She worked with me at Def Jam. She said two things. Your personality is one that people will love you when you walk in the room or hate you. There's no in between. You have that, magnetism where you stand out, right? And the second thing is, it is obvious that you are never satisfied. If you fix something, it'll be on to the next thing. If you fix something, it'll be on to the next thing. And I had to agree with her in that way because I always want to strive for what's next. And I live a life, and it could be to my detriment, it could be to my advantage, but I live a life that I'm never happy, never satisfied. And truthfully, I literally just got to a place where I am able to sleep comfortably at night. So for a lot of years, I felt guilty if I fell asleep, right? Because there was always something to do, and I was never to the point in life to where I wanted to be. So how could you sleep? How could you be social? How could you do anything that is other than the hustle? And Taryn had said, regardless of where I am in life, this is her advice to me, I earned the sleep, right? And so I said, Jazz, you need to work on probably time management a little bit better, but go to sleep so that you can have the peace that you need to move forward.
Right.
So in this move is where I allotted myself, very bizarre, right? I allotted myself sleep. Like I literally cut off the TV, cut off the lights, and I go to sleep. right? But the previous me would take naps, would have a to-do list for 2 o'clock in the morning. I often say that I got up, 2 o'clock in the morning, but today, I got up at 4:52 a.m. as opposed to 2 a.m. Right.
Progress,
And so
progress.
progress. Did I feel guilty for falling asleep? No, but I do realize that I have 30 things on a written to-do list, that I have to accomplish before I allow myself to go to sleep. But yes, I'll go to sleep.
So we've been talking a lot about being that strong Black woman, and that
Mm-hmm.
part of it is giving yourself some grace.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's exactly what you're talking about right now, is learning to give yourself grace, giving yourself rest, being
Yes.
able to be vulnerable and say, you know what, this is not fair, and I don't like this.
Yeah. But what do you do, right?
Right. What do you do? Well, you know what I've found? I found that you speak up about it. I think
Yep.
we've been conditioned to just swallow certain things. So
Mm-hmm.
if your colleague with less experience, less credentials is making more than you, we just
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
swallow it. And I say no more to that.
No
No
more
more
to
to
that.
it.
No more to it. It's unacceptable. It is egregious in every way. Will you continue? Like, have I had experiences here? Absolutely. But it's not because it is of Howard. It is because someone chooses to operate in that manner. Does
Absolutely.
that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yes. So
Absolutely.
at the end of the
Listen, no
day,
matter where you go, there are going to be people who are not going to recognize you for your abilities and your talents and what you bring to the table, simply because of what you look like when you walked into that room.
absolutely, the preconceived notion. And I say, you can take that preconceived notion, because ain't nobody going to outwork me, ain't nobody going to outdo me, and ain't nobody going to win my life over me. So you can't have dominion, you can't have victory in my life. It's my life. And so people, that makes them uncomfortable. They want you to do what they want you to do in that space. And I think that I've always been vocal in that. It's my decision, but I've been more vocal to say out loud no, as opposed to a private or secret no, if that makes sense. So
Absolutely.
the difference is being vocal. Like, I've had a bunch of people, and I can't wait till this comes out, who have called me, who have harassed me, who I haven't spoken to in a million years. And get angry when you don't do what they need you to do for them in your life. This is my journey. It's not yours, right?
And you
Reflect
have
on
that
the
right
times
to
that you have
include
assisted me.
who you choose to include in that journey.
And
And I
I'll do
think,
whatever I want
we
to.
need to make that shift, and we need to be okay with making that shift and
And people
saying,
need to be okay with that.
absolutely, this is my journey. I'm going to make the
Mm-hmm.
decision that I feel is right for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to be guilty or guilted by anyone
Mm-hmm.
about the choices that I make for myself and my children.
And that's it. And you know what? One of my other biggest things, and one of my lessons that I learned, one of the biggest lessons, regardless of whether you call someone a friend, a family, or for whatever that is, they give you advice. They give you dictation about your life based on what they envision it to be. And it doesn't necessarily have to be what's best for you or who you believe yourself to be. So I've made bad decisions based on sharing my personal business with people who I assume to be girlfriends, or assume to be friends, or assume to have my best interests at hand. So the other lesson that I've learned is to make my own decision and live with that.
Sit in it.
It is what it is. But you can't. And there's a couple in particular, and I'm like, why do I even listen to you, chick? Because you don't even have my best interests or my kids' best interests. You want me to do good, but not better than you.
So how do we remedy that? Right? Because that is a big problem, particularly
Women.
between Black women.
It
right?
is.
Part of my dissertation was specifically about that topic, that you walk into a room, you're hired, and you think, oh, thank goodness there's another Black woman. And, we're going to be friendly. And actually, that woman is the one that's coming for you. She's the one who's making complaints about you and, taking credit for your work. How do we change that narrative?
I think that it's something that has been, in our mindset, right? And it is a level of healing. It is a level of understanding and just changing that, making that shift. You and I know all too well about our amazing sorority, Delta Sigma Theta sorority, that, from my experience has been nothing but uplifting, nothing but are you okay, sister? What can I do for you? I love on you. And that's, the atmosphere that we need to have widespread in every circle, every situation. I don't need to hear the story. Do you need something? And if that makes sense, then, it's about healing. It's about changing our mindset. The women of the Black women in history, right? I read something the other day, a perspective that you don't always think about. Yes, we know that we had to bear the weight of the world, right? Yes, we know that we were used to nurture the white breast. I mean, we were used to nurture the white child, right? However, the perspective was Black women were no better than the cattle. Black women it was illegal to be charged to rape, abuse, solder, and do anything negatively to you cannot go to jail. You cannot be charged negatively, right? If you were Black women were used to produce babies more so sometimes than being in the field, because slavery was their business. Right. So imagine being forced.
That was their workforce.
That was their workforce.
You had to keep the workforce going.
And it just, it kind of perpetuates history. And we have kept that mindset of if it's not you, it's me. So let's continue with that mindset of self-hate, of unworthiness, of the being at the bottom of the totem pole. I've watched other demographics of women rise or be consistent, and
they pull each other up.
Pull each other up.
Pull each other up.
No skills,
and I think you're absolutely
degree.
Right. We need to change that narrative, right? There is enough space for both of us to be here and bring in a third and a fourth. There is no limit on what we can do, but this country has designed it as such to keep us clawing at each other, pulling each other down. And until we open our eyes wide enough to see what is actually happening, I think sadly we're going to stay in this current state. And so that's why, to me, these conversations are so important, to know that you were able to talk to your friend Taryn Mitchell and say, she was able to say, hey, come, I'm gonna set up a interview for you.
She said, I got
you. That's awesome that another woman was able to pull you in, right?
She is thebomb.com.
She is thebomb.com. And so, as you're there at Howard, and I know you mentor so many students, and so I don't even need to tell you, make sure you're pulling another female up, make sure you're pulling another female up. But I think it needs to be said in general so that our listeners who may have experienced negative situations with other females, that leaves you with a bad taste in your mouth. And sometimes because of that is the reason why some women respond in the way that they do when they see another woman coming into their space. Right. And so
I've had friends who
work together to change that.
You're right. And and you don't want to kind of, categorize and be, have PTSD behind it, because often we do, right? I remember during my, the time I had made the decision to get a divorce, my one friend who I thought was my friend since high school, we've been through ups and downs, ins and outs. I trusted her with my life, my children. I originally called one of my sons, her godson, right? Had the audacity to tell me that I needed to consider the other woman's feelings. Another friend told me, and during this time, that, well, of course he's going to feel like that because you. And while I accept responsibility for a lot of things, I will never consider another woman's feelings. Right. But these are the things, because they'll see you in the light that they would like to see you again, or the fact that they may have a lack thereof. Right. I have a friend who just stopped talking to me because of an assumption that she didn't have what I have. And I was just like, you didn't ask me what I have, or you know what I have. Right. And so
And how
we
does
as
what
a
I
black,
have affect
uh-huh,
you? How does that affect you? How does that
anyway.
take away from? Did I take it from you?
Right, right. And so I've learned, some amazing lessons, over the years. And at this crossroads, it definitely is about, not leaning to PTSD. It is about not, um, pigeonholing. And like you said, it's about that healing. It is about moving forward. It is about, recreating our culture. And I always say it's never too late for us to, start making, new history, and
Right.
breaking what they call these generational curses and thinking that we can't. I will die trying. And that's just the lessons that I've learned over the years. And then just to finish, leaving this legacy for my kids and making them be proud of the mother that I chose to be.
So I cannot let it go without asking, especially since you brought up your divorce and you
Mm-hmm.
brought up creating new paths. Tell us a little
Yes.
bit about your love life. Are
Oh,
you seeing anyone? Would you remarry again? Because part
oh
of
my
the fear
God.
of becoming a boss lady
Yes.
is that something suffers, and oftentimes it's the relationship. So tell us,
So
how has your journey been in that regard?
absolutely. So I would say that my marriage, the impact of my marriage and divorce had nothing to do with my career. It was his ass. And the decisions that he chose to make as a man, right? Did I have some put in that? Absolutely, because the decisions that I chose to make as a woman, right? But I will say this, now moving forward, do I have a love life? No, because I still have these lasers on of getting to the next level, right? And so I said, God, I know this is so funny. The other day I was going to put on my friend, another soror, her name is Radia Rondon, who is my friend from high school, who is an attorney here in the DC area, put on. She turned 50 this year. We turned 50 this year. God, this is the year that you're going to meet me, have me meet my soulmate, right? And so, me, I'm super silly. So I was going to put, God, I think that on the day that you sent my soulmate, I was absent. Run him back, Jesus. So I could find him. I promise you. But
Make sure you're not
actually,
absent again.
make sure I'm not
You better
absent.
have perfect attendance this year.
He show up wherever he is, right? So I was saying maybe I'll start answering them little DMs. I saw that a couple of gentlemen that tried to date me during my transition period. 3 of them are married. So I said, okay, God. So to answer your question, yes, I am open to.
Right.
I said, God, you gonna send me a little retired NFL player? um, or someone that may be still playing, that might be my age bracket, so I won't be called a cougar for real.
So
But I'm
listen, on the
open.
Sunflower Nation, what we do is we
Yes,
we put out what we want, right?
Lord
And
God.
the Lord, the universe will provide it. So if
Yes.
you had to identify the top 5 characteristics and what you are looking for in a partner, what are those?
Mm-hmm. So the first one is leadership. I am tired of being the head of the household. Let him be the head of the household, financially, mentally, physically, emotionally, leading the household, right? The second one is height and weight. I need somebody big and strong, right? Education wise, he has to be educated. Higher degree, right? Whether he, is practicing in that, a love for me, and I want to say a love for my children, and progressive in, I wouldn't say religion in that way, but spiritual in that way, because we are so tied to European beliefs of religion. Well, that's a whole nother conversation, a whole nother, conversation on the podcast, but definitely someone who is aware and awake. of God and who he is and what he means for our life. And then, that same person, and on that same number 5 category, a leader in that way.
Well, I just want you to know that we do not only have female listeners, we do have a lot of males who listen to the podcast. So we are accepting applications for prospective suitors for the hip hop professor.
You have to come correct. There's this little meme that's going on social media saying, what he say? Something about he's in my DM saying I'm pretty. And I'm like, that's so cute. And I saw a lot of, social media is the way in terms of like, how the world perceives dating nowadays. I'm open, but I don't have the time in my day to, dating is a lot, right? I definitely tried. Dating is a lot. So the goal is, let's date with purpose. I'm not saying that it got to be marriage, because I don't know. And then when you spend so much time, or the majority of your life, in and outside of marriage, doing for yourself and creating your own. I've got a house, B. I'm 50. So not necessarily what you can bring to the table, because I'm not materialistic in that way, but don't waste my time at this point, and that's just been my, that has been my, Achilles, right? And then also, I'm not against rappers, but if you rap, you have to have had, gold platinum status. You can't be trying to rap, especially at our age. And that's it. That's the end.
So it's interesting that I don't have anything against the criteria that you have set up. I think we each know what we want. And I think there's strength in being able to say what you want and say it with pride and not, feeling bad about this is what I want. But I would venture to say that some would say that 2 things. One, men might be intimidated by your level of success. And 2, could you be blocking your blessings by this list of criteria? Could there be a man without degrees or without gold records who is skinny and not a big man, but is going to treat you like gold?
Been there, done that. So I'm open and I don't have a type. But you asked me what I desire. Right. And it could be in another package. I'm open to that. Been there and done that. Yes. But you asked me what I like, Jesus. I'm open to whatever that is. So if you say, would I date other than that list? Absolutely. I have dated someone and married someone without a college degree. And look where the fuck that got me. Edit that.
I'm not editing nothing. This is grown people talk.
I love it. But you get my point. So,
I absolutely do. I absolutely do. And I think, again, there is strength in being able to say exactly what it is you want. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Because if you just put it out there generally, like, Lord, just send me a man. Okay, there's one on every street corner. If that's what you want.
Time for that.
But if you know specifically what you want, state it and don't feel bad about it. So I'm with you all the way on that.
That's what it is.
This has been an amazing conversation, and we are almost out of time, but I want to ask you one final question before I let you go. And that is, what advice would you give to an emerging female leader?
And so I would say I would share this advice not only with an emerging female leader, but anytime, someone asks me for advice, don't stop, right? Continue. And then also, wherever the point where you think you are now, there's somebody who's doing more. So there's always a point that you can step up your game. So don't stop. Don't quit. Get up, right? I remember, most recently, so many situations or so many hurdles or so many mountains that I had to climb in my recent adult years, right? And, for whatever reason that was the path that I had to go on. So my advice, not only to these emerging young females, the emerging young Black and brown boys, Hispanic men, young boys, continue. And it may seem difficult and you may seem like, God, why? Because I've been there, and more recently in my life than some will choose to understand and believe, but keep going. And then the other thing is also, setting realistic goals and literally knocking them out. Don't go through life just accepting what comes your way. sometimes you got to plow through. And that's a lesson that I learned, later in my years. And so setting realistic goals and literally chipping on them every day or every week or every month, whatever that looks like for you. But you don't want to live with the guilt, right, that I used to have, or that I have, of, not being where I want to, be. And one of my goals for 2022, 23, well, 23 is finally finishing my PhD. Like, I sacrificed the time because of the job, because I thought that I would. But you can't live because I think I can. Or you have to live with, what you have in front of you and the goals that you have, not someone else's environment that dictates, the solutions for your life or your paycheck.
That's awesome. That is great advice.
Thank you. That's the truth.
I definitely have to thank you as my soror, as a colleague, as a friend, for the wisdom that you have shared with my audience. I appreciate your transparency. I appreciate your energy. I just always feel when I am in your presence, just warmth and love and blessing.
I love you so much.
Your heart be filled with the brightest of sunflowers, even on the cloudiest of days. This is Dr. Edith Banks with the Sunflower Nation, sending you love and positive vibes. Until next time.